to Solving for the Undefined podcast. I'm your host, Johanna, founder of Miss Kuiper's Classroom, the place that equips teachers in creating a healthy math classroom where students can thrive, no matter their academic abilities. But it's not always about the numbers, and that's why I'm here, bringing you the formulas to solve your problems, math and otherwise, plus strategies on cultivating that necessary math mindset. And that's what you can count on. Hello. Welcome to a brand new episode of Solving for the Undefined podcast. Today we have a guest with us, Lindsey Lippert, who is here to tell us all about her new role as a STEM specialist and how we can use STEM in our classroom. Lindsey, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here today.
I know, it's so cool to meet an Instagram friend in person, even though we're online. It's so cool. I'm
I know
excited.
it's fun to be able to see each other in live time.
I love it. So will you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Lindsey Lippert, obviously, and this will be my 12th year teaching this year. I've taught everything 3rd through 8th grade. Most of my time has been in elementary as a classroom teacher, and then I spent 3 years in middle school. I decided I wanted to. Well, I swore I would never teach middle school because I was like, those kids are terrifying. Absolutely not. And then I worked at a school. My principal jumped up to a K-8, and he was like, I have to bring you with me. And I said, not at middle school, you're not. Well, one thing led to another and ended up in middle school teaching math, loved it, and actually really miss it sometimes. And I was like, he always teases me because he says, I was right. Now he's a principal wanting to be a principal at a high school. And he's like, I'm going to take you to high school with me. And I'm like, no way. I'm all of 5'1". So those kids are huge and no way. So, but yeah, I went up to middle school, came back down to elementary school, and I've just been kind of feeling an itch for a change. And so this year I was lucky enough to land a STEM role where I'll be teaching K-5 STEM in my building. So I'll teach, I officially have about 519 students that I'll get to see. I'll see the entire school in kind of a middle school schedule. So it's kind of been nice. I'll see them for 45 minutes once a week as a specialist. So they'll come to me when their teacher's on prep and stuff. So I'm very excited for that new role to build in. My background with math is very strong, and I've always loved science. I originally went to school to be an engineer. So it kind of is this perfect, combination of all the things I really love. So
that's so cool how it kind of just worked out that way.
Yeah, it was really one of those it's meant to be situations at my school. It was kind of I wasn't sure if this was my right fit at my current building, and just having some growing pains being in year 12, just kind of getting that itch. And it opened up, and our current STEM teacher went into a coaching role, and then her job opened up, and I was just like, oh man, if I can get this, this is where, I feel like it. So it's been funny because, we all have those back to school blues when we come off of summer break. And this year is the first year where I'm still, the morning when my alarm went off today, I was really oh no, what is that? But at the same time, I feel like this is the first year I'm I can't wait to, get in there. I can't wait to start this just to kind of get my feet wet in this new role. So
yeah, that's so exciting. Will you elaborate a little bit on what it means to be a STEM specialist?
Yeah. So, every building is different, and I'm sure, across the country will have all kinds of different, identifying roles or, definitions of that. But for our school, in our district, I'm in Western Washington, just north of Seattle. So we are starting our work. We've just been looking as a district and thinking, we really need to build in these 21st century skills. We need to have students who are critical thinkers. We need to have students who are questioning, that are looking outside the box, just that aren't just waiting for us to sit and give them the information. They want to be active participants and learners and get their hands on things. And when we look at the job market, we're saying, here in Washington, we have Amazon, we have Google, we have Microsoft, we have all of these big companies and then smaller companies that do similar work that are saying we don't have people qualified to do our jobs. I mean, they have so many jobs unfilled because they say, yeah, you have all these degrees, but you can't think in a different way. And the, technology, when it's always adapting and changing, um, we really need people to think outside this box, right? That they can't just say, well, this is what I do, X, Y, and Z, because we don't know we know where we want to go, but we don't know how to get there. That's, and that's that piece. So for our school, we have, I guess, chosen or been chosen to become a STEM focused school.
Ooh.
So it's kind of like it's a work in progress. We don't exactly know what it's going to look like and where it's going, but the idea is that in 4 years from now, as we have this gradual rollout, that we are going to be really having all of our daily curriculum, both in the specialist roles and in the classroom, really revolve around STEM. So that it's really project based, it's very hands on, and it's a lot of those things where um, it's not necessarily one right answer. There's lots of different ways to get there. As I'm sure you know, in the math, classroom, we teach all these different strategies, right? And we just want them to, do what works for them. And so thinking about it like that, just thinking of, we talk a lot in our kindergarten and first grade classes, we're talking about light and sound. And so we start with this problem at the beginning where they're having to communicate over a distance using light and sound. And so then we give them all this background knowledge about how sound works and how light works and how color theory works and all these kind of things. And so in the very end, they have to actually design a way to communicate. It's like a desert island kind of a situation where someone's trying to find them from far away and they have to communicate that they need help. And so I was thinking about it. I was like, well, they're probably just going to say a cell phone or something like that. But I think the cool thing is because we're giving them all this background that we're kind of dripping different ideas at them the whole time, that once they get to it, there's all these different ways they can take, what they're trying to do to communicate. So that's what STEM specialist looks like for us. We are working with Project Lead the Way, which is a STEM company, and they're a nonprofit that has really done a lot of amazing work about really, they have an order of their lessons and they have it set up where it's all of these things that are really with problems that the kids are excited about. Like our second and third graders have to rescue an animal. And so we give them all these different things and what kid's not going to want to rescue the tiger,
Right.
whatever it is. And so, so they're really engaging where the kids are excited about it. And I'm just excited to be part of this, really this rollout in our district, kind of on the ground floor where I get to help kind of shape what it looks like and then, train the teachers as we bring more schools on. So
I love that. That's so cool that your school is willing to pilot that and become something that other schools can look towards as an exemplar.
right.
And I love that even kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade are getting involved in these hands-on activities where they have to reason a problem, because starting out those kinds of skills when they're younger is going to be so beneficial in the long
Totally.
run, even though the job force for them is many years away.
Right.
It's still better to start them young than to wait till later,
Yeah. And I have two little girls at home, and so I love, bringing in the whole women in STEM and all of
Mhm.
that kind of stuff, and I think that's awesome. But two, when we had talked, my oldest is going into kindergarten this year, and so we talked kind of about schools, about things that she'll get to do, and all of the things. And as we're talking with schools in our area, a lot of them reserve STEM education and those things for gifted and talented students who are, outperforming others. And so it's like this extra challenge for them. And that's wonderful. And I'm sure those gifted and talented students do amazing things. But I've always worked inner city, high poverty schools where I want all of those kids to have that. I want all of my students to have this hands-on, this 21st century, these skills that can really get them to the next level, and not just that it's reserved for a certain group of students. I like that it's, at our school, we're giving it this opportunity for everyone. And the beauty of STEM is there are some kids who in the gen ed classroom are like, I'm not as excited, or, maybe just don't participate as much. But when we see them walk into science and with STEM, they're excited because they're building and they're thinking in different ways where that's maybe traditionally not always as valued. So when we're looking at that, I think that's the big transition piece that I'm so excited about, to have it where our whole school is going to be this STEM focus, that the classroom teachers will be reinforcing it, that I'll be reinforcing it, that all of these kids will be able to think about all the different STEM careers that there are and say, like, that could be me. Like, I can see myself in that, not just, well, I'm not good enough because I don't have straight A's, or, things like that, and making sure that it's open for everyone.
Yeah. And I want to touch on two things you said. First, like talking about working with students who are from poverty. I work at a Title I school, so that is my normal classroom
Yep.
for us. And we were reading this book a couple years ago as a staff called, I'm blanking on it, but it's by Eric Jensen. And in his book, he talks about how with students who come from poverty, in order for them to be engaged, they need the element of relativity to them.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said that right. But it needs to be something that they can tangibly see that matters,
Yeah.
because otherwise it's this abstract concept, like, what does it mean to solve for something?
Right.
But if they're given like a problem where it's like color and light and they're trying to get themselves from a desert island, it gives it more context and gives it meaning, and therefore they're willing to buy into that.
Yeah.
And then another thing you said was how they can see STEM roles and see, like, that could be me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of students who come from poverty, because of the way they live, like, future, they don't think about the future. It's not something that they can tangibly recognize sometimes. And so by giving the opportunity and like showing them, like, these are things that jobs that you can take because you're working with this. And yeah, I think it's so cool that
Yeah.
it's part of what's going to be your everyday in your
Right.
classes, rather than just for talented and gifted students.
Yeah.
So
And those
that's
kids
so
deserve
exciting.
it as well. But
Mhm.
I want it to be where, everyone really sees that and
Yeah.
has their hands in it, and they're, you know, just involved in it. Because like you said, I've almost always taught in Title I schools as well. And so, um, we talked about that often students of all different, they aspire to be what they see. And so if in their community they're not seeing certain jobs, or because so they just don't know about them, it's not their fault they're not aspiring to those, they're just not aware. And even as I've done more research into different STEM fields, I'm shocked at the careers that are out there that I didn't know you could be, like a food stylist, and that's a STEM, or or like the person who taste tests ice cream and things like that at the Tillamook factory we went to, and they were like, that's a STEM field, because they're using the sciences and they're cutting open the pints of ice cream and they're making sure that it's, all the toppings are mixed in evenly, and they're doing all of those things where, when you share those things, the kids are like, I want an ice cream test, because
Yeah.
I'm like, I want an ice cream test. And so just really helping them see, how broad, that it's not just that you're sitting in front of a calculator doing mathematics, or you're not just, an old white man with crazy hair doing, chemical explosions in a lab somewhere, that STEM looks like everyone around us. So that they can really see, like, that can be me and I can do that. And it doesn't always require a 4-year university, because that's sometimes things that exclude students of poverty because of the financial burden. And so being able to show them that, there's so many valuable careers that we have that are through trade schools and things like that, and through even community colleges and things like that, so that they can really see, I can do this, and I want to do it, and I can, regardless of my family's background.
Yeah, that's awesome. So with maybe thinking about a school who doesn't yet have a STEM specialist like yourself, what would you suggest for a classroom teacher to start incorporating STEM into their classroom?
So that's always the tricky one, because there's STEM is intimidating, and because it has this, you say, oh, STEM, or it's kind of a buzzword right now. And so people kind of maybe don't even realize a lot of times the stuff that we're doing that's already kind of fostering that STEM and that like inquiry and that way of thinking, that it doesn't always have to be this huge thing, but even just, in our everyday instruction, adding in open-ended questions as often as possible. And I've taught fifth grade a lot, and I always told them, I'm going to let you in on a teacher secret, that I don't actually answer any of your questions. I just ask you a question back. Mm-hmm. And they're like, you see the kind of gears turning, and they're like, oh my goodness, you don't, and there's sometimes I do, of course, but thinking about when, we'll be looking at a problem and they'll say, well, it's 7, right? And I don't know. Why do you think it's 7? Well, because I did, these steps to get there. Okay, well, group, what do you think? And so you're kind of probing them with those questions, and you're never giving them a yes or a no, but eventually they are like, I know how to do this. And that's, they're getting that way of thinking. So I would say that's something that all teachers can do, 0 cost. And once you start doing it, you'll realize how much more you get out of them, because then you're not carrying all of the intellectual load as the teacher. I always say, I don't want to be the keeper of the knowledge. It's you guys. There's 20, 30, 40 of you, depending on your class size. There's all of you, and there's just one of me. It doesn't mean that I know everything, because I definitely don't, but that we as a group, are so strong. So I think incorporating the open-ended questions is huge, because it gets them starting to think more about and justify their answers, but also gets them to start questioning each other. Because I was telling them, I was like, that's all you have to do when your partner says something. It's just like, well, how did you get this? Or why did you do this? And it's never that you're, disagreeing or something like that, but you're just kind of teasing out their thinking. And so, and then the other tip I would say is just really, and it's, don't be afraid to get messy is what it is. Sometimes you're going to have little paper scraps and tape, little balls and all the kinds of stuff everywhere. But just kind of embracing that messy in the moment, and the kids can clean it up. Day 5, they can all clean it up. But the messy is sometimes that evidence of learning, where it doesn't mean, I think the classrooms that we have now look so much different than, maybe the way we grew up or our parents grew up, where it was, I sat there, I listened quietly, I said yes, 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 and whether I understood it or not kind of wasn't ever asked, wasn't ever shown. Versus now, and it was like, oh, you're a good teacher because you have a quiet class and they all sit and listen. Versus now, it's like, it's not that they have to be screaming and yelling and running, but I want them having conversations together. I want them, cutting and gluing things together with, very inexpensive materials. We have, we use a whole, construction paper, toilet paper tubes and cardboard tubes like that. Looking around my classroom right now, things like we've asked for shoe boxes and things like that, because it's easy cardboard that a lot of people just throw away. Or we've asked, everyone has Amazon boxes these days, so bring in Amazon boxes, and it's amazing what you can build and create with stuff that kind of we end up throwing away or recycling. And so I think that's a lot of the people that I'm around get nervous, because they say, well, I don't have this huge budget. And it's like, well, cardboard tubes, we were just going to throw away or recycle. all of the boxes from our online shopping in the middle of the night or whatever. That's, you know, and maybe I'm the only one who does it, but
No, definitely not the only one.
you know, and things like that, that those are those found items that we have around us fairly readily. And, you know, and then construction paper. I'm trying to think of the company that I just found on Instagram. I think it's like STEM with paper or something like that. And they have a whole unit and all of these different activities that's just simply paper, scissors, and tape.
That's awesome.
And it's like, okay, even no matter how title of a school and how little money we always had some paper, you know, and things like that. And you make it so here's your 2 sheets. You know, it doesn't have to be a lot of paper, but you always could find paper and tape and or glue and things like that. So what I love about that is really, you know, getting creative with the limited materials. Like you said, I've always worked title, so I've always had to get creative with the resources that I have to kind of stretch the no money that I had. Or, you know, I don't want to spend a ton of money on my classroom, so I had to use what I have, kind of a thing. And so, you know, just embracing the mess and the chaos and knowing that so much learning is happening when there's that messy, that uncomfort, or the discomfort, because we think it doesn't feel like you have so much control over that. But that's really when so much learning is happening, and they're problem solving and they're critical thinking, and you know what, they're just having a really fun time. And that's what I want. I want them to be excited about STEM. And it's not always, you know, this fancy thing. We do those background lessons that are really scientific, or, you know, we're measuring and we're doing very mathematic things. But, you know, I saw, who is it? Brooke Brown, Teach Outside the Box, was showing one of her activities where they read a book called The Recess Queen, and then they used cardboard tubes and tape to make a playground.
What?
And I thought, you know what? That's super cool, because what kid isn't going to be like, yeah, I'm going to design the new playground, you know? And again, it's very inexpensive materials, and yeah, there's going to be little paper scraps and things like that, but we all have scissors, or, you know, I have enough scissors and tape and things like that to make it happen for those kids. So, you know, embrace the mess and just get creative with the supplies that you have. STEM does not have to be expensive, and like a budget buster.
Yeah. I think I've always had the misconception that STEM is this big fancy thing that is like all about robotics and building these like technological like masterpieces, whereas like there's more to it than that. And even like you said, like just incorporating those open-ended questions and giving students space to be creative in a field that may not be seen as a creative field. I don't think many people see math or science necessarily
Right.
as like this artsy creative field, when it is,
It
because
is.
there are so many ways to do one thing. And so giving students that space to let them just go with it, I think is really powerful.
Yeah. And that's what I want them to see too, that they can do this at home. It doesn't have to be something like you said, where now granted I do have robotics equipment and we do that. We do coding, but you know, when we start coding, we do it, it's completely tech free. We are just getting them used to creating instructions. So we give them directional cards, and they have to put the code together like in a set of cards, and they have to put it in order, and then we block out little, you know, like a little pathway on the floor and stuff like that, and the kids have to get from point A to point B. And sometimes they have to, you know, jump over obstacles as you get more, you know, challenging and stuff. But it's really cool because they're learning the coding skill, and it's completely like basically free. It's just me printing off some cards, you know, and cutting and things like that. But it's not really fancy equipment to do that, where the kids are getting used to, and you'll be shocked how frustrated they get, because they think, you know, well, just tell they realize how much is involved when you even click one button on a computer, how much one click, and then they think of all the stuff they do on the internet and how much that has, you know, how much background that really takes to just click a button, and then all the rest of the stuff that we can do. But I think that's really cool that we can do things as fancy as robotics, but starting at that small scale. We can do things that are, we can do things like if your budget allows, go crazy, like get the fancy things and the, stuff, but don't discount the, you know, the basic equipment, because I can tell you my students have no less fun with the paper tubes and the tape
Yeah.
than, than anything else. Even if I had, I could buy fancy things, but at the end of the day, they just want to build something and they want to create and they want to, kind of show off like what they designed, and that's the, like you said, that beauty in a field that maybe traditionally has been deemed very like cold or, kind of very buttoned up and things like that, we're really seeing now how much is coming out about that's, they want the they want the
Yes.
creative thinkers, they want the creative people. And that's what we've talked about in our trainings too, that there's some of these tech companies are actually hiring people with art backgrounds, art and music and things like that, because of their creative thinking. That it's like the coding can be taught, but the creative thinking, if you have that and you're just naturally good at it, that's what they're after. And so, kind of really, I feel like right now we're kind of taking all the stuff that we kind of grew up with and it's like turning it on its head, thinking
Yes.
about that it doesn't have to be this like cold, boring thing. It really is creative and fun, and finding the beauty in math, and that how math is all around us and in nature and things like that. So it's exciting.
Yes, it is, absolutely. And it reminded me how I had this one teacher tell me about her friend, how she was helping her daughter, I believe, with math, and she was like, adding has changed since I did it. It's like adding itself hasn't changed. It's just like
Yeah,
the way we approach adding has changed because
totally.
we understand now that you don't just have to like stack it up and do it that way. Like you
Hmm.
can, but there are other options that may help some people better understand adding than just this way. And so I
Right.
thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I
And
know
so
when they get so upset about the new math, that's always my trigger. I'm always,
uh-huh.
oh no, okay. And it's my husband will always say, he's like, don't say anything, like don't say anything.
Yeah.
If we're at like social gatherings, but I'm like, okay, let me tell you, math hasn't changed in thousands of years.
Mhm.
Like the math that
Mhm.
we're doing is the same math. It's just like you said, it's the approach. It's thinking, you know, coming from fifth grade, we talked about multiplication and all the different ways we can long multiply or long divide. And that always, like you said, it created that struggle for families at home, because the kids would say, well, we learned these 4 different strategies and their parents we learned one. And so they're like, well, it's only the way. And so it was always our mission to kind of like, we made little videos, or we'd have little
Mhm.
kind of PD for the parents kind of a thing, to get them excited, like saying, look, it's just another way. And to really understand the why behind it. Why are
Mhm.
we doing it this way? So you can actually understand it, not just memorize it and then forget it.
Yes. Yeah. And what do you think the impact of giving students that creativity, or what impact have you seen that creativity on your students have? That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I mean, a couple things I would say for sure. Engagement. I mean, and as a teacher, at title schools, we know that attendance is always a struggle, because there's kids who either can't come for family issues, or, transportation, or any number of things. But I want the kids saying, like, oh, we're doing STEM today. Like, I can't miss. Right.
Mhm.
And so making that engagement really go through the roof, that not only are they seeing themselves as these roles, but they just want to be part of it. They want to be part of creating something. And that's a big thing that I'm going to be selling to them this year, is really saying, we're creating this program and you guys are creating it right here alongside with me. That you're going to be starting with our school, you're going to kind of set the pace for what the other schools in the district are doing, and what this looks like. And so really getting them excited and involved, because that's really what we want, right? We want our kids to
Mhm.
be excited to be here. We want them to be, begging to come back. And at the end of the day, they're not running out the door. I mean, they still are
Yeah.
excited to go home. I'm excited to go home too, but you want them really excited while they're here. And I feel like that STEM piece really captures their attention.
Mhm.
Um, Also gives students that hands-on piece that maybe has been missing, where um, in kind of that worksheet era that we went through, and some people are still in, depending on your curriculum, that it was just so much, it was just drill and kill, right? It was,
Mhm.
here's your 100 problems, you have a minute to do them, write the time sheets and
Yep.
like that. And it's just like, oh no, please don't do that. We all, every time you say that, everyone from like our era is like, oh no, like
Yeah.
we all remember that feeling. And
Oh goodness.
uh, so thinking about, we really want them, building that creative thinking and not just like, let me do it until you hate it kind of a thing. I think it also keeps, from a teacher side, it keeps me engaged because the kids are giving me these ideas that wow, I never thought about doing it that way. Um, or just, oh, I didn't know that material could do that, kind of a thing. I'm learning right alongside with them a lot of times. Um, and so for me, it just keeps things fresh as I'm, getting up into the veteran teacher stage where I want to be always excited to be at work. And not that every day has to be sunshine and rainbows, because we all know it's not, but that I want to be just as excited to come to work every day. And so it really helps me be excited about my job, coming here and be doing that with the kids. But then, let me think. What was the impact? I was thinking of something else, and it's totally slipping my brain now. Um, if I think about it, I'll come back to it. I can't remember.
That's
I got
okay.
too excited about being excited.
Yeah, yeah. And that excitement piece, like for the teachers too, um, especially as a teacher who teaches the same thing 3 times in a
Yeah.
day. And there have been years past where I teach it 4 times a day. But if I'm just doing like a drill and kill, I don't like those things I
Hmm.
don't do them very often if I have to. Um, but it just gets so boring for me. And if I'm not engaged, like how am I supposed to expect my students to be engaged with it?
Totally.
And when we're doing something that is hands on and really engaging for students, it helps me be a better teacher because I'm seeing how they're thinking about it and how, like you said, all the different ways they come up with that I had not even like considered. And so it
Hmm.
allows me to then take that idea into the next class if someone um need some assistance, I can be like, so and so did it this way. Like, see if that helps
Absolutely.
you. And so then it's like taking that student who taught me something and helping someone else learn. And it's just like going back to that big, we are a group, we're better together than a single brain by ourselves.
Absolutely. And I thought of the other thing. I was going to say the other thing that I love about STEM is that you see different sides of the kids. It's not, I feel like it. I've taught, like I said, upper elementary most of my career, and there was always this like, I always kind of referred to it as a pecking order. They kind of knew, you know, Lisa does this. She's the one that always raises her hand. So if I'm in her group, I don't have to do as much and you have to try to have them unlearn that and tease that out. And, when you get the new student that comes in, you have to always kind of go back to, they're trying to figure out where do I fall and who does this and that. But when, when we do stuff in science or STEM, there kind of isn't that established role because it's about the creative thinking. And oftentimes my students who were maybe my higher achievers stereotypically were the ones who struggled the most because they've done really well in education because they've spent so much time being told what to do and doing it really well. They've can, do it right back to you, back and forth, but they can't come up with a creative way to do it, or explain their thinking, or um, try a new strategy because they're like, this one works, why do I have to do another one? And so, last year when we came back hybrid, and so that was a whole nother thing, but we had kids that I was told, oh, they have behavior plans and they're going to be a huge problem in the class all the time. And I said, well, let's just let this first kind of week go and see how they are. And whenever STEM was available, they were I had two students in particular, very little performance. They had, kind of given up. They just knew that everyone else understood it. I don't understand it. They would tell me, I'm tired of being the stupid one. But when STEM came out, because there was no right answer, because it was just, how are we going to solve this? Here's your materials, go. They would be the ones who were first to be thinking of all the creative solutions, because I think the way I would always think about it is they probably are trying to kind of creatively solve these problems all the time. They're just, they have those gaps that we haven't quite figured out yet. And so you really saw them shine in a way that built their confidence up, because they weren't always feeling confident in, a regular classroom. And so it always made, you kind of saw a different kid coming out than you saw coming in, because sometimes they'd be really worn down, or, the math test again was hard, or, they didn't understand the reading and things like that. But when it was STEM, it was kind of like all bets were off, and like the playing field was leveled, which I really thought was powerful for them as well, to see that they could do this. And it wasn't that, Johnny was the top student always and forever. Wow, he was struggling. And that was even if they weren't the top one, to see, wow, that kid who I thought was invincible struggled today. Everyone struggles. It really put like a tangible to that growth mindset that we always push with the kids. So I just loved that you got to see this bright side of students, and you got to build confidence in ones that didn't always have that confidence.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to incorporate some more STEM into my school year this year.
Yeah.
That I have a better understanding of what it is and how I can slowly and easily implement it for myself. So
Yeah. And
thank you so much.
even trying one thing in, a semester or something like that. And like you said, if you're doing 3 classes, you kind of get the hang of it as you go, right? That third class kind of gets your best performance because you've done it so many times.
Exactly. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming today and sharing your knowledge with us.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me.
Of course. So can you share where people can find you on social media?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram. My handle is at Mrs. Lippert's class. So I'm transitioning into that STEM role. So I have a lot of, book recommendations and that elementary piece that's there. And then I'm also on Teachers Pay Teachers with the same store name. So you can search my name or Mrs. Lippert's class, and it'll be there either way.
Awesome. And then to end us out, I ask this every single time. What is your favorite math-related joke or pun?
Okay. So I had to think hard about this because I didn't want to let you down. So I thought, seasonal, right? We're coming off the summer break, so we're still there. And so I was like, what's a math teacher's favorite summer?
Oh my goodness.
Right?
Yes.
You get in the different kinds of sum, and coming off of summer break, I was like, yep, that's the one.
Yes. I don't think I've ever heard that before. That is a good one. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. To find all the links and resources to things talked about in this episode, head on over to MissKuipersClassroom.com and click on podcast.